programme structure for the undergraduate degree is that we have 2 trimesters per year, and these typically run from October to end of January, and then end of January through to usually mid-April. And typically you study 3 modules per trimester. In terms of live contact, so in real time when you're working alongside your peers and staff members, this is a wee bit variable. So your timetable will give you the specifics of it, but it's usually between about 3 to 6 hours per week per module. So we have a system called CellCat, and you'll find out a lot more about CellCat in your time at GCU, and that generates a personalised timetable. So once your registration is successfully completed at each year, you get a personalised timetable. And this is typically finalised by week 1, because as you can imagine, there are sometimes small changes that are needed. In terms of assessment, again, something we are very, very proud of within our programme is that we have a real diversity of assessment. You're not just coming in here to do lots and lots of exams or write, tons and tons of essays. We are really, really proud of the fact that we've got current diverse assessments that utilise a range of real world skills. Of course, we have things like lab reports, we have things like presentations, but we also have audio-visual assessments, so preparing things like posters and infographics, because not everyone in the world is going to sit and read an academic paper, so sometimes we have to find ways of getting our information across in a more accessible form, such as in a short video or using a poster. And I think it's very important for me to stress at this point that in terms of entry into honours level, which is at our level 4 of the programme, there isn't a sort of minimum grade average in order to get in. We're not like some other universities who might require a B average or a 65 average to get into honours. In theory, if everyone passes all their modules at level 3, everyone can progress into honours, which again is something we are very, very committed to. One of our unique selling points is the fact that our students can graduate with specialisms, and I should stress that these specialisms are entirely optional. So every student who satisfies the requirements will graduate with the BSc Honours Applied Psychology. However, depending on the modules that a student chooses in the 4th year of their programme, level 4 of their programme, and the topic of their final year empirical project, it is possible for students to choose to graduate with a named specialism, which could be in either counselling, psychology, health, forensic psychology, or sport and exercise psychology. If you're interested in learning more about the specialisms, again, that's something that you could maybe pick up with your personal tutors, usually by the time you get sort of halfway through 3rd year or into the beginning of the 2nd trimester of 3rd year, because again, it's entirely optional. There's a whole bunch of reasons you might want to leave with the specialism. There's some reasons you might not want to leave with the specialism, and that's why we keep them as entirely optional. But yeah, we'll talk a lot more about that, particularly when you get into the 2nd trimester of your 3rd level. But again, if you want to start having those conversations early, people like your personal tutor can give you a bit of guidance with that. One of our unique selling points is that we have optional specialisms. What does that mean? It means that students who take a certain set of options in level 4 and do certain topics for their final year empirical projects can actually leave with BSc Applied Psychology brackets, either counselling psychology, health psychology, or forensic psychology. And one of the things that's nice about having that option is that it just gives you an ability to kind of personalise your award a little bit, to reflect exactly what it was you did in your final year. These specialisms are entirely optional, And as I said, it's mostly driven by the optional modules that the student chooses in their final year. So if you're thinking potentially about any of these specialisms, you'd maybe want to start speaking to your personal tutor around about, maybe February time in your level 3. Before you make your optional choices. And there's a bunch of reasons you might want to do the specialism. There's a bunch of reasons you might not want to do the specialism. So that's why we keep them optional. And again, if you're remotely interested in this, then please, speak to your personal tutors and speak to the relevant module leads, usually around about the sort of February time of your level 3. In terms of level 2, as I mentioned before, there are 2 academic trimesters and you study 3 modules in each. In trimester A, which is October to January, if we include the assessment period, we have applying clinical forensic and counselling psychology, which is a 20 credit module. Research methods 2, again 20 credits, and the introduction to biological, cognitive and developmental psychology. All 3 of those are 20 credit modules. Those modules are very, very important because they don't just feed into level 2 trimester B, but they actually feed into modules that you'll study later on in the programme at level 3 and at level 4. So the learning and the assessment and the development that you do in these level 2 modules, you'll come back to again and again and again throughout the remainder of your degree. And that's obviously a really important thing to bear in mind from the start, is that no effort is wasted. It might be a bit hard to sometimes see the big picture when you're doing certain things at the start, but yeah, believe me, these things will be useful, not just in trimester B of level 2 but throughout the degree. Trimester B is a wee bit different in structure in that you do 2 core psychology modules, the applying health and sport and exercise psychology module, and political and cultural psychology. Again, those are core 20 credit modules. What we have in trimester B, which normally runs from the end of January until about mid to late April, is an optional module, a 20 credit optional module, and these typically come from the biological sciences or modern languages, social sciences, or interprofessional education. And again, you may have already made your optional choice, in which case that's great. But if for some reason you've not been able to finalise your optional choices yet, then contact us and let us know, and we can give you some further information about that. In terms of those additional options, the modern languages that are normally offered would be things like French and German and Italian and Spanish, and those are useful for a whole bunch of reasons, including things like employability. Employers often look for evidence of language skills. Another option for students who are joining us in level 2 is to study abroad. And that would normally be in trimester A of level 3. In the past, we've had students go to places like Canada, the Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, the USA, Australia. So it might seem that it seems very unrealistic at the moment to even be thinking about that, but we don't know what kind of world we're going to be living in. So we're not ruling out the possibility of exchange in trimester A of level 3, and so that would be around about September or October 2021. So it's worth finding out a bit more about our exchange opportunity sort of earlier in level 2, because obviously there's a lot of planning that needs to go into that. We have an exchange coordinator who's Dr. Birgit Schroeter. So it's worth following up with Birgit if you're at all interested in going on exchange, and that would normally be in trimester A of level 3. In terms of level two assessment, what I've given a little outline here of is the variety of assessments that you'll be doing. First of all, in trimester A, and then in trimester B, you'll note that there's only five modules here, and that's because your sixth optional module depends entirely on what you choose. If you want to find out more about the different assessments, then that will be available in the level 2 guide, and if you've got any problems accessing that, then just let us know. So as you can see, it's a variety of things like presentation based assessments and essays, lab reports, workbooks that you'll sort of be working on throughout the course of the trimester, as well as some digital storytelling and some infographic work. So as I said, right near the beginning, we've got a real diversity of assessment here, and that's something that we're really proud of. Individual module handbooks will have the exact deadlines for these assessments, and individual module handbooks and individual online sites associated with these modules will have things like word counts or time lengths for presentations. So yeah, within the individual module sites and within the individual module resources, you get the real nuts and bolts of what they're looking for in those assessments, how long they've to be, when they've to be handed in. But this is just a wee flavour for what's maybe coming in the year ahead. In terms of assessment, and this is just a very rough guide, I've included a link to the university regulations themselves, but the key points here are that we try to provide feedback within 3 working weeks from your submission. So the point here is that we try to stagger the assessments so they're not all at once, and that way you get an opportunity to use feedback from sort of one assessment to another. So for instance, if you've got a lab report in the first trimester, we would aim to have the feedback with you before you would then submit another lab report in, say, the second trimester. Or similarly, if you do an essay in trimester A, we would want you to have that feedback before any other essays in trimester B. So it's not so much feedback as it is feed forward. Feedback comes in lots and lots of different ways. It's not just what comes along with the grade. So answers to questions are feedback. Replies to email are feedback. Taking part in discussion boards with your peers, talking to one another, all of that is feedback. So yeah, it's important to recognise that just that we have a diversity of assessment method, we also have a diversity in how we deliver feedback. Grades and feedback are provisional until we have what are called progression and award boards, and this is where our external examiners and other members of the university community outside of psychology basically ratify everything that we've done to make sure we've done it by the book and fairly and evenly, and that way, if there are any problems, those can be kind of ironed out and recognised. For what's called the first diet, which is the kind of first pass of all the modules and assessments, that normally takes place in kind of mid-June. And then there's a second diet, which is normally in early September, for students who have maybe missed assessments the first time round, or students who maybe have to resubmit certain work. So it's all designed to kind of try to give you the sort of highest quality and fairest experience. So yeah, the progression and awards boards are really taken quite seriously to ensure that we're doing everything properly and to the appropriate standards. So yeah, all grades and feedback that are received until they've been confirmed by one of these progression and award boards, it's all provisional until then. Things like your degree award classifications, decisions about whether or not you pass a module, these are all based on sort of weighted averages of your assessments. So the modules that you're going to be studying typically have two assessment points, and sometimes it's weighted 50-50, sometimes it's 70-30, sometimes it's 60-40. So it's those weighted averages that determine whether or not a student passes a module, and therefore that has implications then for the number of modules that are passed, and ultimately degree classifications. But as I said, I've included a link there to the formal university regulations. To give you a breakdown of what the marking system looks like for the BSc Applied Psychology, we mark on a scale of 0 to 100, and the way it breaks down roughly in terms of words and numbers is that an excellent is anything above a 70 at every level. Doesn't matter whether you're level 1, 2, 3, 4. If it's been marked above 70, it is excellent for that level, and that would normally align with a first class award. A very good is sort of between 60 and 69, which is usually upper 2-1. Good, 50 to 59, which is usually lower second or 2-2. Satisfactory is between 40 and 49, which would typically align with a third class honours. A borderline or a borderline fail is between 35 and 39, and there's possible implications there about whether a module is going to be passed or not if you get 35s to 39s. A fail is between 30 and 34, and that probably means there's going to be implications for passing the module or progressing up the levels. And then, of course, unfortunately, we have to have a clear fail, which is equal to or less than 29, and that generally means that there will be implications for the module pass or indeed progression. But as I said, any grades that come out are always provisional until they're ratified by the exam boards, and then following the publication of the exam board decisions, the progression and award board decisions, you can always follow up with your personal tutor if there's anything you're unclear about. So I wanted to finish by welcoming you again to the BSc Applied Psychology here at GCU. We are the University for the Common Good, and that ethos goes all the way through our programmes, and hopefully you'll see lots and lots of examples of how we are trying to use psychology for the common good throughout our work. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to work through this presentation. I've made a note of my email address and also the email address of Dr. Lana Ireland, who's the Deputy Programme Leader, and you'll meet Lana and I a lot through the time that you're with the BSc Applied Psychology programme. And I've also put down the email address of our programme coordinator, who again is an absolutely crucial member of staff and someone you'll hear from and be in touch with quite a lot throughout your time at GCU. We also have our level tutor address. The level tutor for level 2 is Leslie Ann McRae, but the most appropriate email address to use is the generic level 2 tutor address. In terms of finding out a wee bit more about us, about who we are, what we do, I've listed 3 of our social media profiles, and that's a great way to kind of get in touch with students who are already on the programme, and finding out a little bit more about what's going on right now amongst the staff and student communities. I wish you all the very best for the remainder of the bootcamp, and I look forward to working with you in the academic year ahead.